Morning, all. We're going to go ahead and kick off here in a couple of minutes, let everybody get a chance to get logged in, and we'll start our webinar Wednesday. Morning, everybody. Looks like we've got a quorum here of attendees. Welcome to another webinar Wednesday. Appreciate you getting up early enough and jumping in for our content today. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and kick off here. Quick reminder, the Bronco giveaway, again, it's closed for 2022, but go ahead and keep note of the link. We'll be making some announcements for 2023's giveaway. So this way you'll be ready to do all you need to do to try to win a brand new Bronco or whatever vehicle it is. I think it's going to be a Bronco again. Also, another quick announcement, we'll have giveaways today at the end of our webinar. So just know, stay on until the end to be able to be in the drawing for this. Anybody who is within the webinar attending today is eligible for the giveaway, which we'll do at the end. Oops, jumped ahead, jumped behind. There we go, right in the middle, just right. I'm your host, John Splone. I've got years of experience within the digital workspace and the arena of delivering solutions and technologies for users in productivity and boosting their productivity, as well as enhancing their user experience. Everything from the cloud to on-prem type solutions, hybrid type solutions, all ancillary solutions that are out there to support those environments and make those better for the users. I have that experience within that. Recently came from Citrix. Well, I can't really say recently anymore because it's been a little while. But while I was in my role at Citrix, I handled global enablement for Citrix Cloud for the partners, internal tech resources, as well as the customers out there, educating and enabling and training them within the cloud solutions and providing your VDI and digital workspaces within the cloud. Huge gambit as far as roles within the IT world. Started out, never really got into help desk, but started out in the whole .com era, and then worked my way up to where I am today at XenTegra. Got my dad jokes. Here's one for you. Why can't you ever see an elephant hiding in a tree? Because they're so good at it. Anywho, also find that balance of Zen between my geekiness and nerdiness. I've been wasting my time the past couple of nights building out my Legos. So that's part of my nerdiness. And I've upgraded my collection of my Lego Star Wars hats. So with that, we'll go ahead and jump into a little bit of background of XenTegra, where if you don't know, or if you do know, refresher for you, we're a reseller, services provider, solutions provider, as far as it's concerned within the digital workspace. So we handle all of those solutions that help you enable your users, your customers, to be able to be productive, whether they're working from home, working from the office, and also enhancing security within the environment, monitoring all the sides of the house that you need for a complete solution within a digital workspace. And what I like to say is we've got the ivory tower, and then we can work our way back to what's reality, because we all have budgets. So XenTegra, who was founded by Andy Whiteside, was a solutions architect over at Citrix. You saw the lack of enablement within the community as far as solutions were concerned. They were falling short, both partners, solutions that were out there, providers that were out there, all these community and ecosystem within this environment. They really weren't helping customers understand and educate about what's going on out there, what they need to be looking at, what could really enhance their environments. So this is where we grew out of. We're a value-added reseller as far as solutions are concerned. All of our cloud platforms across the board. We provide our professional services from anywhere from assessing your environment to assisting you building things out. And we're just helping you with designs. Managed services, manage and support within your data center, within your cloud provider, even within our data centers. We do have our own data centers for hosting any type of environment out there. And we also offer our micro assessments, which are complimentary. Somebody like me or one of my counterparts will be able to help you out with something like that. So with no further ado, what I want to do is hand us over to our guest today. We have the team from LogicMonitor with us today. And just to give you a quick update with them, we not only are a partner of LogicMonitor, but we're also a customer. We consume the solution ourselves at XenTegra through our own hosted environment. So with that, I want to hand it over to the team that's with us today. Support Jude and David. I believe, David, you're kicking off, correct?
Yeah, that's right, John. Thanks for the intro.
Sure. Thank you.
So I think that, first I want to start off with, if we can turn to the next slide. LogicMonitor has been around for a little over 15 years, so we're not new to the market, but I think our growth has kind of kept us a little bit hidden in that we've been going, month over month, year over year, growing, around 15%, or I'm sorry, 50%. And that growth has been consistent up until about a year and a half ago, when we had the SolarWinds breach. Our business went from a 50% growth to like 500% overnight. And the reason for that is because so many customers that either had legacy on-premise monitoring software like a SolarWinds, BMC, CA, IBM Tivoli, HP OpenView, all those legacy systems that have always been on-premise, they had to make a decision. Do they continue to run on-premise systems where they've got to, build out the infrastructure to run it on? They've got to scale the databases. They've got to care and feed the system. They've got to build DR. And then they've got to secure it in their own data center, because it is in their data center, and therefore there's exposure, potentially exposure there. And the challenge was that a lot of those customers said, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. I just want to consume monitoring as a service from LogicMonitor. And so that's really what caused our business to really spike and take off since that date. So instead of growing 50%, like I said, our pipeline overnight, went to 500%. And it is because it's a new model. It's a better model. And it allows customers to focus on what's important to their business and not have a whole team monitoring the monitoring system. So that's why I'd say, we've been around since 2008, and we have over 2,000 plus customers. And those customers, they've moved to LogicMonitor for really three main reasons. One is we're SaaS. So like I said, a lot of customers are tired of being in the monitoring business, and they want to consume it as a service. The other thing is we're agentless, and we have auto discovery out of the box. So a lot of those customers that were concerned about risk of being compromised, they could shut off their monitoring software in their own data center and immediately start leveraging LogicMonitor to monitor their infrastructure, their network, out of the box. Because like I said, it is agentless, so we're not having to deploy agents, and on every device that we want to monitor, and it's also auto discovery. So we're able to go out and automatically collect all the information around the devices in the environment. So those are the things that cause a lot of customers to move to LogicMonitor over the last couple of years. If you go to the next slide, you'll see I'm not sure if, am I driving? Okay. You'll see some customer examples of customers using LogicMonitor. I want to talk about a few use cases, and they're not even, this is just a subset of customers, but there's some of the largest organizations in the world, including one of the top 3 airlines in the world, use LogicMonitor. And the reason they chose LogicMonitor, about a little over 3 years ago, they had a major data center outage. Their planes were grounded for 24 hours. And their challenge was they had almost 200 individual workloads that were involved in the single service of ticketing a passenger, getting that passenger from one city to another city, and getting their bags out the other end. And as you can imagine, those 200 different individual workloads that made up that service, they were running on all sorts of different infrastructure, from legacy Unix systems in the customer's data center to, all the way out to public cloud containers and everything in between, including IoT devices hanging off the network. And so they wanted a single dashboard that they could get a service view of all of those different workloads and look at the overall health in one place. So they went out to bid, and LogicMonitor was the only platform that could give them that service view where they could see the health of their legacy Unix systems, and the same dashboard their public cloud containers that were spinning up and spinning down dynamically, that they could to get a view of that all in one. So that's a common use case, and that customer, they had probably, I think, 5 or 6 different monitoring tools that they were trying to piece together to get that one view. And LogicMonitor deliver that. So, kind of monitoring tool consolidation is a common use case, because customers, they don't want to, have to work on all these different silos, right? The network team has a monitoring tool, the server team has a different tool, the database team has a different one, the cloud uses the cloud native. So a lot of customers are struggling with that. And they have these silos, they have a bunch of different monitoring software in their data center that they've got to, maintain and secure, and they want to get out of that business. So that's a common use case. Another one is customers moving workloads to the cloud. So if you think about customers that have not only the performance and health of what they're running in their own data center, but they also want to have visibility to the performance and health of what workloads are running in the cloud. But they also want to know, well, what's my utilization look like? Am I subscribed the right amount of resources to deliver the performance that my users expect? And so another example of that is Allscripts. They're not on this list either, but their challenge was when they moved to LogicMonitor, they had a lot of their workloads running in Microsoft Azure. And what they found was a $250,000 savings a month just on memory utilization in Azure, because LogicMonitor gave them that granular metric detail around not only what the performance, but also what the utilization rates were on the infrastructure that they owned. And so it's a huge savings for them, and for many of our customers that are, that have hybrid environments, that have workloads running in the cloud. It not only shows you what the health and the performance, but also the utilization to optimize that from a spend standpoint. And then the third use case is that I want to mention is SaaS applications. So we monitor SaaS applications, and again, another customer example. One of the longest standing universities in the United States was using LogicMonitor to monitor their network and infrastructure. And when COVID hit, all of a sudden Zoom and their online e-learning application became mission critical applications for them, because that's how they, continued to doing business with their students. Well, their request was, I want to be able to see the performance and the experience that my users are having in Zoom, in the Zoom classroom, and with their online e-learning app. And we were able to roll that right into that same dashboard that they're monitoring their VPNs, the network, and everything else they were already monitoring. So a lot of SaaS applications, both external and internal web monitoring is another use case. Synthetics around that, the customer experience around those interactions is also, something that we monitor. So that's another common use case. And then the last one I'll mention is IoT. One of the largest MRI machine manufacturers in the world that deliver, the service of MRIs, they use LogicMonitor to monitor their MRI machines. One of the fastest growing retail food chains uses us to monitor their store equipment. There's even a pest control company in Europe who uses us to monitor their traps to know when to go out and change their traps out. So it's a very extensible platform. And like I said, that's really been the, one of the big use cases is customers can get a holistic view of their environment in one place and then drill down based on individual workloads and how they want to track the success and the performance of that workload. So if you go to the next slide, one thing that we see is that environments are not getting, simpler, they're getting more complex. I mentioned, the fact that we monitor legacy data centers, but we also monitor everything in the public cloud. We monitor, the SaaS applications. So, and it's just expanding. So it's not getting, more simple, it's getting more complex. So there's a lot of endpoints that you have to have visibility to get the overall experience. And so if you go to the next slide, you'll see that what we're doing is we're bringing all these different components together. And so, we started off originally, we were infrastructure monitoring. Then over time, we added the ability to surface anomalous logs so that now when you have an alert on an infrastructure piece, instead of having a swivel seat and go into a logging tool like Splunk or Sumo Logic, or just, worse yet, having a request access from the security team for the log data and waiting for that, that request to come back, we now surface the anomalous logs right then and there within that same dashboard that the alert occurred. And we've also added application performance monitoring. So we're now tracing, providing the traces to that work stream right there with the log and the alert. So now you've got it all together from an infrastructure, application, and business view. And if you click one more time, you'll see that what we're doing is we're bringing the three legs of the stool, if you will, right? Metrics, logs, and traces together. And we're correlating those things and putting them in context to give you that unified observability and then being able to make intelligent decisions around that. So that's one of the key differentiators for us is we're bringing all of that and we're surfacing it together. So you're not having to work in swivel seat between 4, 5, 6 different tools to try to figure out, what's the correlation between what I'm seeing in one system versus what's happening with performance of the end user and vice versa. If you go to the next slide, you'll see that this is a common scenario for most customers that we talk to. And this was actually a customer environment on the left before LogicMonitor. And the tools they were using from a monitoring standpoint, you can see there's 10 plus different tools that they were leveraging, and what their environment looked like after adopting LogicMonitor. So this is pretty powerful because this, again, not only are you have a lot of silos on the left, a lot of different tools, you're trying to dig through there and weed through there to figure out when you have a performance issue, or worse yet, when you have an outage, what's your mean time to resolution, and how do you track that, and how do you pull that information together with all those different tools on the left. Whereas on the right, it makes things a lot more simpler, gets you to the performance metrics very, very quickly, gets you resolutions very quickly because you have it all in one place. If you go to the next slide, there's also a cost associated with, this is an example of a customer who had 20,000 devices that they were using SolarWinds to monitor. And when they switched to LogicMonitor, they saw over a $1.5 million savings. And then you can see that a lot of that savings is just the fact that they had an entire team monitoring the monitoring system. So there's a lot of infrastructure costs, there's a lot of labor costs and operational costs that when you consume monitoring as a service from LogicMonitor, you don't have to have a staff that's carrying and feeding that system on a daily basis. Go to the next slide, please. So one of the things that that we get asked a lot is, okay, how do we get started, right? What's the the way from where we're at today to how do we get to kind of an optimized state when it comes to monitoring? Well, we built kind of a lightweight, we call it assessment, but really it's just uncovering what your current scenario is, what your current environment looks like from a maturity perspective. We have a discovery questionnaire, and typically it's in an hour and a half to 2-hour time investment on your side to just go through an interview process, and then we'll provide you a kind of a readout of what's your current assessment on from a maturity standpoint, and kind of where you fall in the maturity scale. And then also we'll give you specific steps on here's where you're at today, and here are the 3 things or the several things you need to do. If you go to the next slide, I think there's a screenshot of the kind of a sample readout on the next slide. There it is. So you can see this is an example of a report that we deliver, and it shows you kind of what the maturity levels are, shows you where you fall within that scale, and then also what are the 3 key steps to help you move to the next level. A lot of customers are using things like ServiceNow to kind of get their arms around the overall ITOM service management environment, and this is a way to kind of help feed that. As a matter of fact, ServiceNow, not only do we have out of the box bi-directional integration with ServiceNow, but they actually use LogicMonitor internally to monitor their own environment. So it's a great this tool is a great way to feed into whatever IT operations optimization that you're working on, whether it's a ServiceNow, Big Panda, or any those ITOM platforms, that we're able to feed that into the platform, and then also just knowing that they use us to monitor their own information as well. Next slide. So now I'd like to turn it over to Jude Bakir, who is our sales engineer, and let her actually show you the platform and walk you through what the platform can do from the standpoint of getting visibility into how it works.
Great. Thanks so much for the intro there, David. Howdy, everyone. Hope you're doing well. Like David said, I am a sales engineer here at LogicMonitor. I've been working with the product for a little over 2 years now, and it's been very exciting to see how the product has grown and kind of evolved, even just in these past 2 years, right? I think one of my favorite things about LogicMonitor, even from a non-biased standpoint, is that the development and software engineering teams are constantly working to enhance and kind of improve the product. So we see updates made to different aspects of the platform, really every 3 to 6 weeks. So working with a platform or subscribing to a platform that's constantly pushing out updates, will give you really reassurance in that you're making a good investment here, right? Really future proofing your investment, because we need to stay relevant when it comes to your monitoring strategy. Okay? So what I am going to do is share my screen, and we'll take you through the portal and kind of have a little bit of a conversation regarding the different ways that LogicMonitor might bring value to your current monitoring strategy. And we do have a Q&A as well as a chat section within the Zoom windows. So please feel free to put any questions that you might have into there. I'm going to kind of keep an eye on it here and answer the questions as they come in. And anything we don't get around to, we'll certainly be able to follow up either at the end of the conversation or maybe even afterwards. Okay. So give me one sec here to share my screen. And David, could you let me know, or John, could you let me know when you can see my screen here? It should say Application Health Citrix XenApp across the top.
We've got it now.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And so for everyone attending, the dashboard that we're looking at here, though it is specific to XenApp, this could really be for any type of business application or even a commercial off-the-shelf application that you need to monitor multiple components of. Right. So the benefit with LogicMonitor is that not only is it going to give you the total observability from a hybrid view, right, or a hybrid standpoint, but it will also give you the opportunity to observe the entirety of your tech stack, right? So when we're looking at not only your on-prem items, but your cloud items as well, we'll be able to really, we'll say, kind of contextualize the interactions between those devices and give you a better overall view of how these applications are happening, or excuse me, are performing from the perspective of the end user or whichever audience, right? This might be customers for some of you, this could be internal end users, but from whatever audience would be using these applications, right, and kind of interacting with them. So again, keep in mind, this doesn't have to be XenApp. This could be any application that you're supporting in-house. But what we're seeing across the top is just some basic infrastructural health reporting. So you can see we'll start with what we call a knock widget, which gives us an overall alert status of our devices. So for XenApp in particular, again, we're using a variety of different device types or components in order to support this application, which include virtual hosts, right? We have a NetApp storage device, a NetScaler device, some other network and server items, even some websites that we're monitoring here. And we can see overall, we're in pretty good health, right? We've got green checks across the board with the exception of these 3 alerts. Now, from the perspective of an engineer or an admin, if I saw this on a dashboard, I might want to click in on this device, maybe take a closer look as to what the alert message is, and get a better sense of, how impactful or how severe this issue might be. Right? I can see here this is actually a configuration alert, so LogicMonitor is backing up my VMware configuration files, and it looks like a change has been made to the file, and that's what the platform is notifying me of. Right? Now, luckily, it doesn't look like the change that was made to this configuration file is affecting anything really, because back on the dashboard, we can see XenApp as a service still has a green check mark, so it is still up and running. We're not seeing any latency associated with this or any downtime associated with this app. Right? So despite the fact that we might have some other infrastructural alerts that are listed within the components, we're only really measuring very specific metrics in terms of how they're affecting XenApp. Right? So what this means is that if you have a SQL server with multiple databases on it, and each one of those databases supports a different application, if database A goes down, but it doesn't necessarily contribute to the health of application B, you won't necessarily receive an alert for application B, right? Because the two are not related, despite the fact that both databases would be living on the same server, right? So there's a lot of, we'll say, flexibility, and that leads to accuracy in your alerting schemes. I wouldn't want to be notified of an alert on a device if it didn't actually impact the things that I was responsible for, right? And on the flip side of that coin, I would need to be notified of components of my applications if something was in fact going wrong, right? So one of the most immediate returns on investment in terms of value that we see with LogicMonitor users is that right off the bat, their alerting becomes much more accurate, and they get better insight and really a more accurate picture of how their infrastructure is running and how those business services and applications are being affected. Now, as we scroll down a little bit further through this dashboard, we can also see how these different components are related. So we're not only viewing a dashboard that's specific to network or specific to SQL or specific to VMware or even cloud objects. What's really important to take away from this dashboard is that we're viewing all of these component or all of this variety of components really in a single view. Right. I'm sure, in the industry, you hear a lot of vendors talk about a single pane of glass and how beneficial that is, right? It's kind of an overused term, if you will. But when it comes to your monitoring strategy, it is really a core benefit. You may have heard David talk earlier about kind of swivel chairing or having to access different applications and dealing with tool sprawl. And we do see that as a bit of a challenge within the monitoring arena today, right? You might have, a single tool for monitoring your network environment, a tool for your virtual environment, a third tool for your cloud monitoring. And so when we're trying to correlate performance across the three of those, it can be really difficult. Unless, of course, we have everything side by side or on a single screen, right? So being able to correlate performance and also how these alerts might affect other types of devices up and downstream in terms of the workflow is highly beneficial, right? So let's say an end user reports latency with an application, right? Or some type of service that they're using. What we can do is build out a topology map that shows the relationships between all of the components and the metrics that support the service or this application, identify where those alerts live, and also see where the alerts, or I should say, what types of alerts, excuse me, what types of devices those alerts might be affecting downstream. Right? Now, if we mix a little bit of machine learning into this, what we can do is extrapolate this out even further to do things like identify root cause analysis. So if you have the type of architecture that spans multiple locations, whether that's global or national, or perhaps you have a segmented network in a number of ways, what we can do is identify an entry point, let's say like a router or a switch. And in the event that that router or switch goes down and your traditional monitoring, we'll say your monitoring approach, you would get tons of alerts, right? Not only would the switch and router raise an alert, but also any devices that are connected to those items. Because when they're not discovered on the network, a standard monitoring platform might see them as powered off or unavailable, right? Unreachable. Now with LogicMonitor, we'll use a little bit of intelligence to realize that, okay, this primary or this initial alert where the switch or the router had gone down is the root cause of all of these other devices going down, right, or being unavailable. And therefore, we're going to suppress those cascading alerts, which in turn does a number of things. Firstly, it eliminates the possibility of alert storms or alert floods into your ticketing systems. It reduces the sense of, we'll say, kind of panic from what I've noticed among technical teams, which in turn, of course, allows them to approach the issue with a more level head, right? So when there is a severe outage or some type of, we'll say, down alert, a lot of times it can become really chaotic to try to identify where that alert is occurring and then to, of course, mobilize to remediate that issue. But with a little bit of topology mapping and some intelligence mixed in, we can easily identify where the alert is occurring, see the alert, of course, so we can just click on this topology map and see the alert message here. And then again, kind of execute a fix for that issue and have those underlying alerts clear. Right. So a lot of the communication that happens between your monitoring platform in terms of alerting and what's actually happening within it is, we'll say, simplified with a platform like LogicMonitor that uses some of that intelligence and kind of, we'll say, understanding of how your devices work in order to communicate that information. Right. Now, as we scroll through the rest of the dashboard here, we start to venture into some different areas, right? Things like the end user experience, right? End users that are accessing the NetScaler and the Citrix storefront sites in order to access their VMs. What is their experience like? So this could be latency on the website or sign-ins. We do, by the way, support synthetic checks and maybe some more sophisticated web checks. So if you'd like to use like a dummy account or authentication account to sign into a website, whether internally or externally from your network, perform some tests, maybe even discover objects on the website and then return that in the response, LogicMonitor can certainly help with that, right? So we do support synthetic testing here. Out of the box, we'll also discover expiration of certain certificates. I know SSL is a big one that we tend to miss, or the royal we, right? That engineers and admins tend to miss with some of their monitoring solutions, right? But that is available out of box. We can discover how many days outside of your expiration and also alert as the day approaches, right? The day of expiry. As we scroll down a little bit further, you'll notice that we have a ton of different monitoring sensors available, right? Out of box, right, or within the core platform, LogicMonitor provides close to 3,000 monitoring templates that span across a variety of different operating systems and off-the-shelf applications. But you do also have the freedom and flexibility to leverage the LogicMonitor API to make connections and pull metrics from devices or applications that might not be available within the repository. All right. We do also, by the way, and I'll just open this in a new tab really quickly, do also have what we call the LogicMonitor Exchange, where you can access a public repository, search across templates that have been created by the community and submitted for security review, and actually download these templates. So if you have some, some arcane application or device type that you'd like to pull, or a really unique set of SNMP OIDs, or you have a really unique MIB, and you want to see if somebody else has already created a sensor for this before, maybe dedicating some time and resources to creating that, feel free to come into the public repository, search for the item that you need, and then go ahead and download and install that sensor. Right. Again, all of these sensors that are submitted do, or I should say, are subjected to a security review, where our team, led of course by our CISO, reviews any code as well as the information that the templates are pulling from your device. So everything that you see on this page or within this repository, has been reviewed by the internal security LogicMonitor security team. Okay. Just coming back to this dashboard again, we can see that we've looked through a variety of metrics and a variety of different type of widgets that display these metrics for better correlation, right? You'll also notice as I drag my mouse across any of these trend graphs, we'll have some kind of vertical lines that pop up that allow us to correlate performance across different metric types. So for example, I'm looking at my SQL Server connections, some cache hit ratios, deadlocks, and timeouts in terms of the number of locks per second. And so we can see, again, the performance across these different metric types. Right. Now, these poll-by-poll metrics, by the way, are kept for as long as 2 years within the LogicMonitor time series database that is hosted at our data centers, so you don't actually need any type of storage dedicated on-prem. As a matter of fact, all of this data is collected by our collector servers, right, aptly named. And those collector servers are really just we'll say identified through the installation of the collector application on either a Windows or a Linux server, and we, with the correct credentials, can perform a quick scan of your network, automatically import those devices, and begin monitoring straight away. Now, as we ingest a lot of these metrics, we have somewhere in the neighborhood of 85 dashboards that are available out of box. And these dashboards, just as quickly as the metrics were gathered, will also be populated. We actually regularly see through evaluations folks that are up and running with the new monitoring solution inside of 90 minutes, just because of the ease of implementation with LogicMonitor. I'm sure you may have noticed on one of David's slides earlier, we did receive an implementation award for the fall of 2021 through, of course, some third-party evaluators, right? So this that really, I would say, is a testament to some of the return on investment you would see with implementing a new monitoring solution. I know a lot of the time it sounds super scary, especially if you have, if you've used SolarWinds or some other type of monitoring solution in your environment for the past 10 years, right? Perhaps it's a really sticky strategy, but it's got some challenges, whether it's alerting or inaccurate reporting or what have you, right? Or maybe it's just not scaling with you. I would not shy away from the implementation of a new solution just because of this preconceived notion that it would take a lot of work and dedication. We've got a ton of resources there to help you. Even through something like an evaluation, we do set this up in best practice. So in hopes that if you choose to move forward with LogicMonitor, we can spin your evaluation portal into production. We also have professional services teams with different levels of engagement that really can fit any and all levels of comfort and familiarity with the monitoring tool. But just really quickly, I started talking about, of course, how long these metrics can be stored for. And again, we will store them for up to 2 years. Now, unlike other monitoring solutions, LogicMonitor does not aggregate these metrics. We'll keep that poll-by-poll granularity for as far back as 2 years. I only have a 1-year license in my portal, so that's why this is showing here. But the reason we do this is to maintain accuracy within our machine learning repositories. Right? Now, what do I mean by that? Well, let's take a quick look at these servers here. We are monitoring Windows CPU performance across 4 different servers. a delivery controller, a VDA host, a remote collector, and a SQL server. Right? We can see that these bottom three, the VDA host, the remote collector, and the SQL server, all kind of operate between 0 and 20% of CPU performance on average, right? We do have some spikes here and there, which we can, maybe take a closer look at, but generally they're all pretty low in performance. Now, the delivery controller is a little bit higher, between 50 and 70% on average. And that might, spike up to 100%, or performance might drop down to 30%, as we can kind of see yesterday morning, kind of at the beginning of this graph here. But what this highlights, of course, is a very, we'll see, a large difference in range in terms of how our devices perform. Now, if you're using a monitoring solution today, you know that out of box, something as common as like a CPU, RAM, disk capacity, or even network performance, these all have predefined alerting thresholds, right? Now, LogicMonitor is not an exception to that. We also have predefined thresholds based on industry best practices. However, we do also give you the flexibility in defining your own thresholds, right? Now, if you have tuned alert thresholds in the past, this may have been a little bit of a heavy lift for you, right? It requires some level of intimate knowledge in terms of how your devices perform and what kind of the typical range of behaviors for those devices. But with LogicMonitor, we'll use those pole-by-pole metrics that we're storing to define an expected range of behavior for you, right? And then based on that range of behavior, we'll calculate anomalies within that performance, right? So we don't see very many anomalies here for this delivery controller, but if we take a look at this VDA host, we can see a bunch of red spikes. You'll also know that the expected range, which is symbolized by this kind of bluish gray bar moving across the graph, has shifted in performance. So we went from 20% down to 10%, right? And this does change over time, right? The longer that you are performing, we'll say monitoring and metric storage here, the more accurate this becomes over time. But we'll also see this expected range change seasonally. So if at the end of every month your finance servers tend to pick up in performance because that's when checks are cut and whatnot, you'll see this expected range rise with that. Or perhaps, network usage is highest during production hours. Of course, you'll see this expected range kind of ebb and flow with that usage. Right. But what's important to take away from this is that LogicMonitor can help you define the appropriate alerting templates. Because something that's running at 10% CPU performance, even when it spikes, is probably never going to hit the standard 90, 95, 100% alert threshold ranges, right? But this is still something that I need to be notified of, right? If we're normally operating at 10% CPU and suddenly it spikes up to 60%, and maybe that's sustained for 10 or 15 minutes, this could mean serious latency for any applications that this server is supporting, right? If I was responsible for it, I would still need to be notified of it. Right? But no monitoring template is going to alert at a 62% CPU performance out of the box, right? So by using this anomaly detection, what we can do is enable what are called dynamic thresholds for your environment. This allows you to apply thresholds that are unique to each device just based on their range of performance, and also change the severity in your alerting based on things like the deviation from the expected range, we'll say the persistence of an alert. So if it lasts for 5 or 10 minutes, we can go ahead and notify you then, rather than just something like a blip on the radar, like we're saying here, right? So there's a lot of flexibility in how LogicMonitor can really aid and support a better understanding of your environment, and therefore more accurate alertings. Right. We'll also use anomaly detection to help us understand what is happening in our environment, right? Just opening back the CPU graph back up, we can certainly see what has happened and when with a lot of these graphs, right? CPU spiked to 80% at this point in time on the server, right? But unless, again, we have that tribal knowledge or we're very intimately familiar with our devices, we might not have a good explanation as to why that CPU had spiked, right? We typically see these kinds of questions come up, particularly when we've hired on new engineers or admins, when we've introduced new devices to the environment, or when we've introduced new applications, right? It can be really difficult to correlate why certain things have happened unless we have a better understanding of the other actions, I should say, that have occurred on those servers. And that's where logs enter the game here. Right. So David mentioned LogicMonitor kind of started out as an infrastructure monitoring platform. But in the past couple of years, our dev teams have been very diligent in, again, enhancing and improving the product. And that includes the introduction of log ingestion. So unlike Splunk, we're not going to use logs to do any type of, we'll say like security or forensics, but instead we're just going to ingest these logs, and these could be syslogs, these could be application-based logs, these could be logs from your cloud environment, security, etc. And we'll ingest these logs and identify, again, anomalies among them. So if we load this out maybe to the past 3 days and take a closer look at my environment, we'll probably see a higher number of logs and anomalies generated here. Okay. So I'll give this just a second to load. But while we do that, you'll notice the point in time in which these logs were ingested, the resource that they were ingested from, the log message, and of course the group that those devices belong to. So in the past 3 days, we've ingested somewhere in the neighborhood of 47 million logs, and among them, we've noticed just over 100 anomalies. Right? Some of these logs did raise alerts because we have some alert thresholds associated with them, things like failure to log in, or if a registry file was corrupt, we can go ahead and raise warnings based on those messages. But we're not going to know every single issue that is picked up within our log stream, we'll say, right, or in our log files. And if you can predict every issue that comes up, you probably need a raise. And so what LogicMonitor does is it ties the anomalies within the logs that are detected from these devices to any infrastructural alerts that are picked up at the same time, right? Let me tell you a story here about when this actually became relevant to my team internally. Right? Take a look at my alerts page to kind of see an example of this. If we do a quick search for a Tomcat server, we can see that just about a week ago, we were performing a web check on this Tomcat server, just a simple, server status query check, and the returned value was 3. Right now, what that maps to in LogicMonitor speak is an HTTP return code of 400. Right, so the service is unavailable or it could not be found. Right, and so we were like, huh, that's kind of weird. This is one of the first times it's happened. I wonder what could have happened here. And with most alerts, LogicMonitor will add some recommendations like, hey, maybe we should investigate this, make sure the Apache service is running, make sure all of these repositories or libraries are in place, right? For something like a disk space alert, it'll say, maybe you need to free up some space or allocate more disk space, etc. Right? Kind of just your standard run-of-the-mill recommendations. But we verified that all of this was in place. Now, if we take a look at our graphs tab, we can see the point in time in which that alert had changed, right? Again, the when and the what, right? But what's really unique about LogicMonitor is it also shows you the why. So when there are log anomalies detected again within that same time frame as when the alert was triggered, we'll be able to list those anomalies here and we can read through them. So if we take a quick look at this, we can see there's a gentleman named Robert, really cool guy. He manages our environment internally. It looks like Robert logged into this device and started kicking off an Ansible workflow, right, or an Ansible runbook. And I believe the script, right, that Ansible is running either copies a file from or tries to paste it to this path, which does not exist because it does have a typo in it. And even though this log has a warning flag, and I could probably perform a search on this and kind of, flag this down as an alert, I probably, going, along the standard course of troubleshooting, would not have been looking for a typo, right? I might even have skipped over this line entirely, frankly. But again, what's special about LogicMonitor is because it has, listed all of these anomalies for me, I can now get a better idea of what may have caused this alert. Right now, this isn't direct causation. This is more correlation. So we're seeing what else happened on this device during the time of the alert, and could that be a possible explanation for why this alert was triggered? And if the answer is yes, well, great. Then we're just that much further into the troubleshooting and the triage process than we normally would be, right? Because let's look at a traditional sense, and you might even be thinking about your troubleshooting process today, right? We get an alert from our monitoring solution. Depending on the type of device that was alerted, we go to those engineers, and if they don't already know, we need to notify them, right? So if this is a database alert or a network alert or a cloud alert, we notify those engineers. Now they go to those devices, they pull the log files, they open them in whatever log viewing tool or maybe a text editor, and they start to parse for the appropriate logs. They do a control F at the point in time in which the alert occurred, and they start scrolling through hundreds and hundreds, potentially thousands of logs that were generated within that time frame. Right Now, you might be thinking to yourself, well, that's super annoying, because it is. And it also takes a really long time. And oftentimes we, again, unless we're super familiar with the standard performance and kind of the activities of that device, we might not even know what we're looking for at first. Again, I can tell you straight up, I would never be looking for a typo. And if I was, I would probably miss it a few times, right? And so again, by LogicMonitor highlighting this anomaly and displaying it to us and allowing us to correlate that performance with the alert that was generated, we are able to achieve a much faster mean time to resolution, right? Because most of the resolution time for issues that occur within our environment is dedicated to things like troubleshooting and triage, right? Finding what the actual issue is. Implementing the fix doesn't often take that long, unless of course you have to wait on like change management or something, right? But implementing the fix is just a very small amount of time in comparison to the total mean time to resolution here. Right? So if we can improve the understanding of the issue and the discovery of what the true issue is, then we can improve that resolution frequency, right, or that resolution time here. Yeah. Anyway, I know we're about 10 minutes from the end here, and I just wanted to ask, any of the attendees, if you have any questions, please feel free to throw them into the chat or the Q&A text boxes. Happy to answer them for you. But otherwise, what I can do is pass it back over to John and the XenTegra team.
Thanks, Jude. Thanks, David. I appreciate it. And let me get this camera back on. There we go. All right. Okay, with that said, let's pop back over here. Like Judah mentioned, is there any questions that anybody has? Anything that needs to be addressed out of this? You can, if you need any further information, want to take a deeper dive with us, go ahead and reach out to XenTegra and we can help you out with that. And Jude and team can help you out as well on their end to do a further discovery within the LogicMonitor solution and how that fits within your environment. So with that, I am not seeing any questions. Everybody's shy. It's too early, not enough coffee. All right, so what we're gonna do now is, do we have Kathy with us?
I'm here.
All right. One thing before we get to our giveaways, what I do wanna bring up is our calendar for this coming month for April of this year. We have the LogicMonitor webinar as of course today, VMware next week, LG next week as well, Control Up on 420 and Liquidware on 427. Our workshops and boot camps for this month, we have endpoint security with IGLOS on 4/6. That's tomorrow or Friday, isn't it? Yeah. So that's coming up if you want to go ahead and sign up and register for that. We have the Nutanix Era Technology Bootcamp, which is 413, Nutanix 101 workshop, which is on 413 as well. These workshops we typically run monthly basis. So, just if you can't attend this week or this month, don't worry, we'll be able to next month, and a Nerdio workshop later on. With that, I do see some things popping up. Okay, nothing question-wise. So with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand it over to you, Kathy.
Sounds great. I'm going to share my screen so that you can see the, let's see here. Here we go. Sorry about that. We're getting there. Sorry about that.
There we go.
Okay, so here we are. I am going to spin this wheel of names, and we are going to generate 2 names to win an Amazon gift card worth $50. So the first one we will go with.
Round and round it goes.
Yep, so exciting. Okay, we have Traves D.
Traves D. Congratulations.
Okay, and we'll do it one more time. $50 could be fun. Okay, Stan M is the next winner. So thank you so much for joining us. And I'll send those out to you soon. Here we go. I'm going to send back my You want to?
Sure thing. I got it.
You got it. Thanks.
Congratulations, winners. Again, Wednesday, Webinar Wednesday from Zentegra. I want to thank again LogicMonitor for being with us today. If you didn't get a chance to get any of that info off of the upcoming events for April, if you just go to the Zentegra website and go to our events tab, you'll be able to see everything that's on the calendar, including our Canadian teams and our counterparts up in Canada. They're doing some technical deep dives as well, so that may be something interesting for you to jump into. So again, I want to congratulate our winners for the giveaway today. Thank you, Logitech. Bye.